Please clap.
All right. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf with you. Got a decent show today. I'm being completely, humble and everything. It's a decent show. We're going to cover a couple of things, including Coulter versus Newt Gingrich. That's fun. Then a California teen accidentally gets basically hated on by Trump. That's interesting. Then we've got some, policy news, economic policy, including what happened when it came to business as a result of the Trump tax cuts. A little bit of information on that, which will come to no surprise to anybody in the audience, nonetheless. And then finally, who is Wall Street most afraid of when it comes to Democrats in 2020? We'll have fun. We'll have fun with that. I will tell you who those are and what I think about that. So, and what about the rest of the Democratic field? And that's also really important. So, look, right now, Kamala Harris, so Kamala Harris, she had a rally over this weekend, and then now she's got a town hall by CNN. You know what's strange about that? So immediately, as soon as she announces, CNN rushes to her and says, town hall. Now, I would understand doing that if somebody was like a front runner. So right now you've got Biden and Bernie Sanders that are both leading in the preliminary polls, right? So now Biden and Bernie, to be fair, they haven't actually announced, so let's keep that in mind. So maybe that is part of their decision making. Look at me being super fair. But wouldn't you give a town hall to somebody who is more of your front runner, or is considered your front runner? Well, look, if you watch MSNBC, which if you do, I'm sorry. That's a terrible decision. Well, then you would see all these stories, and on CNN as well, of, Kamala Harris, she's a front runner. Based on what? Well, again, based on what? We don't have, polling that shows that, no, she's got a great chance against Donald Trump, and she's polling really well among, Democrats, so maybe we'll give her that town hall. No, what makes me think of, because she doesn't have any of that, this makes me think of CNN immediately rushing as soon as she announces, and they didn't do that for any other candidate. Elizabeth Warren launched her campaign. Super, super tough on Wall Street, right? They're going to give her a town hall so she can discuss economic issues. She can discuss her wealth tax proposal, which I think is really bold and really progressive. And I think there's a lot of people in the country that would really like that. Did she get a town hall? No, she didn't get a town hall. Has anybody else that announced get a town hall? No, just Kamala Harris. So I found that super weird. So now you have her immediately getting a town hall, which is going to happen tonight. It makes me think that she is already in the process of being anointed. So I don't like that. I actually like primaries where we have competition. So where we let the people decide and not just the media decide. So, and I said, look at Kamala Harris's record, okay? That's the thing that's most important here, is Kamala Harris, you have to look at her record. Now, there's, of course, smears going on the right already. Oh, she, dated this guy, whatever. Ignore all that, all right? On Kamala Harris and anybody else, any other politician, you got to look at their record. So look at their record, look what they've done. And so far, what I've seen of Kamala Harris is her record as a prosecutor, not great, not encouraging. So I'm not encouraged at all by this. And so you try to elevate her, knowing that her record on criminal justice, especially for people of color, I'm not a person of color, right? I'm not affected by this. Why should I care? Well, I do care, but because I actually care about fellow people, fellow humans. And look, there are policies that she has been in favor of. And I know I'm getting to some weird Kamala Harris rant now. But it's all on policy, right? So you look at her policy of, for example, truancy, right? Punishing the parents, putting parents in jail for truancy. Well, how's that supposed to help people? And by the way, that kind of policy goes after poor people more than anybody. So it doesn't just affect people of color, although the people that are primarily going to be or were affected by this were people of color because of their lower socioeconomic status. They didn't have enough money, right? This doesn't affect rich people. And so, look, that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be talking about in, coming shows. So, like, examining people's records. And I know there's been a lot of other brilliant people that have taken a look at it. The Young Turks did a segment. I believe that the Humanist Report has been, kind of doing some deep dives into their policy positions. And I think that's great. I think that's part of vetting. And so we should vet every single candidate, Bernie Sanders included. Look at his record. And I've already seen a lot of his record, so I actually agree with it. But nonetheless, if you don't know his record, then you should look into it and you should decide based on the merits and who also represents you. This isn't a general election. So anybody tells you if you do that, or if you come out with somebody's record and you talk about it, that you're dividing the Democratic Party, just know that is a talking point by centrist Democrats, by the establishment, to try to stop you from talking about that record. Now is the perfect time to be divided because it is a primary. That's what a primary is for, to figure out who best represents the Democratic Party. So we're going to continue talking about this, and we're going to continue dividing the Democratic Party, if you will, by examining these records and putting them side to side and saying, okay, this is a record. How do you feel about this? If you're okay with that, if you're okay with, jailing kids' parents for truancy, right? Well, okay, then, at least we know. If you're in favor of having a top cop, or if you're in favor of having somebody who broke their fossil fuel pledge, or if you're in favor of somebody who thinks millennials are complaining too much about, the economic situation of the generation, well, that's fine. But at least you know the facts here, and you can make your own decision. So that's what I want to do in the show. That was a weirdly specific rant, and I felt like I just had to get that off my chest. So, that said, we haven't even started the show yet. By the way, you guys, if any of you are in the Midwest where we're just getting slammed by snow, please, if you got to go anywhere, drive safe, drive careful, be careful. Right now, like, we're buried where I'm at. So, I mean, it's really bad outside. Like, I've been shoveling, I've been digging out, because my wife had to go to work today, right? So I'm shoveling things and I'm digging myself out. I got a little snowblower that's battery operated, right? And so I'm doing that and I'm clogging it up with all the snow that's in there, 'cause it's not very big. And I made the mistake of buying like one small bag of salt. I was like, it's not enough. It's not enough. I should have gotten like 4 bags of salt, because it literally did just about nothing. You plow that section out and it immediately fills with snow within an hour. And I'm like, well, shit, I got to put together a show. I got to put together all this stuff, and I got to make sure to plow the driveway. It's been a rough day. So, but anyway, if you're in any of these areas, please be careful, because it's really, really bad out there. And I don't know if it's going to get better, but okay. Anyway, so that's been my day. How was yours? All right. Anyway, so before we get into the show, I just want to give you some updates here. Okay, so right now we're at channel memberships, so that's open if you want to become a member to support the show. You can do that. We got 7 members that sign up now. Thank you to all of you who have done that. There's of course a link in the description. Also on our page, it's the join button, so you can do that. Support independent progressive media. Or as some people on Twitter came at me, Soros-funded media. I'm still waiting for my Soros check. I don't know where it is. Like, I've been waiting for that for years, man. When are we supposed to get a Soros check? I don't know. We also have the fundraiser for the camera. And by the way, if we were funded by Soros, I wouldn't have to do so many fundraisers. We're at $8.15 for the camera. So if you want to donate to that, that's gofundme.com/TYTNationCamera. And that's okay. I think that's pretty much it. So let's start with some of the stories. Now that I've wasted 10 minutes of your time. Okay. Let's move on. So President Trump is known for having a twitchy Twitter finger. And he's also known for apparently tweeting at the wrong people. Well, that's what happened earlier today during his rant about fake news. On Sunday, Trump interestingly enough, went after Fox News for reporting on a segment of the wall. I've got some information about that I will tell you about. But first, let me show you the tweet here, or tell you the tweet. He said, "Never thought I'd say this, but I think at John Roberts Fox and at Jillian Turner at Fox News have even less understanding of the wall negotiations than the folks at fake news CNN and NBC." So this is one of the first times Donald Trump's actually gone after Fox News. So again, I will tell you what they actually said. But first, I want to point out that Jillian Turner, who, yes, does work at Fox News, it was not the same Jillian Turner he tagged on Twitter. This was actually a California high school student that was featured for her soccer skills on numerous local media reports. I'm pretty sure she wasn't out there saying fake news, right? Especially in a Fox News panel. Now, she responded to this by saying, "So that happened." And it has been corrected. Now, this whole thing, of course, is following Ann Coulter. Now, Ann Coulter, Trump also recently lashed out at in a Wall Street Journal interview published on Sunday. Now, this, again, following the entire fiasco of the government shutdown and Trump's border wall, which apparently he learned absolutely nothing about because he's already talking about, well, you know, I wouldn't mind shutting down the government again. Oh, keep digging that hole, buddy. Keep digging that hole. He keeps doing it. Now, Ann Coulter, of course, on his cave, and yes, it's fair to call it a cave. She said, "Good news for George Herbert Walker Bush. As of today, he's no longer the biggest wimp to ever serve as president of the United States." So that's a tweet from Ann Coulter, to which Trump had responded by saying, "I hear she's become very hostile. Maybe I didn't return her phone call or something." She's become very hostile. You realize Ann Coulter has always been hostile, just not to you. She's hostile to anybody with brown skin. I'm just pointing that out, but I think everybody already knows, except for Trump. Trump's like, "She's very hostile now. I don't know what happened." Well, you did cave on the wall, and that is apparent. Everybody knows it. Even you know it, and you can't admit it. Like, no, there was no cave. There was no cave. I was very strong at not getting any funding for my wall after shutting down the government for 35 days. Yeah, real strong position. All right. But you know what's fun about that, actually? I'm going to kind of stick up for Ann Coulter for a second. How weird is that? That tweet, that statement is actually really super condescending. Maybe I didn't return her phone call. Really? Look, even Ann Coulter doesn't deserve that kind of sexist response, because that's what jumped out at me. Okay, he's really a terrible person, even to people that that are on his side. Ann Coulter is on his side when it comes to the wall. She wants the wall more than anybody, and yet he's still condescending. But that, of course, goes to how Donald Trump feels about women and how all women are basically inferior to him. So now, as for another woman, Jillian Turner, she was on Fox News. She was basically what sparked the tweet, right? What does she do? Now, on a Fox News panel, she and John Roberts pointed out how a shutdown actually made America less safe. She said, "One of the losers I want to mention, that I wanted to mention that people are not spending enough time on this week is U.S. cybersecurity defenses. Now, that's, of course, during the shutdown. She's pointing out, well, yeah, nobody's talking about those poor cybersecurity defense people. I mean, look, she's right. But there's a reason that we don't really talk that much about it because, look, the most of the people that we were talking about are government workers like air traffic controllers and people that live paycheck to paycheck. Cybersecurity people, I don't know enough about them. Okay, let's be fair. But she said that one federal source had told her that the government was more vulnerable to cyber penetration and online terrorism in the week before the shutdown ended than at, quote, any point in history. We could be penetrated by a foreign power. Cyber penetrated. All right, you know what? I'm not even going to go there because there's too many jokes that are offensive and not right that I could make about this. So I'm just going to move on here, right? But look, okay, that's true, right? So a shutdown, guess what does make us more vulnerable to different threats because there are agencies that are shut down. Again, you look at TSA, right? If you're a terrorist that wanted to sneak into the country, that would have been a pretty good time to try to get through when the TSA is not showing up to work. So, look, again, Trump shutdown made us less safe. But apparently, if you point that out, you're doing fake news. Now, Roberts, of course, said, and he was on that same segment, he said, I think a mutual friend of ours was saying if you were going to attack the United States, if you were a terrorist during the shutdown, now would be the time. And she said, yes, now's a great time. Look, again, this is true. If you want to point that out, oh no, you're fake news. Fake news. You understand nothing. No. Trump understands nothing. He's a child. And in his latest baby rant, apparently accidentally put a teenager on blast who very likely, and this is the impact of this is why this is important, because he's got millions of people that follow him, which like half are trolls and bots, but still, there's a lot of people that follow him that are diehard adherents. What do you think happened when she got put on? The wrong person got put on that Twitter feed. You think that these people had enough wherewithal to look and see if it was the right person? No, almost instantly, I can almost guarantee that this person got hateful comments and death threats from Donald Trump's base. Oh, you got to get the Twitter away from him, man. Now, look, I'm not the only one who thinks so. There are Trump supporters that are like, get the Twitter away from him. Let him actually do his job. But you got to understand that he doesn't want to do his job. Like, he's the laziest president in the history of presidents. And all he wants to do is sit there, watch Fox News, and live tweet it. That's what he does all day. You got to get the Twitter away from him. And more importantly, you got to get him out. You got to get him out of office. He's I don't know. I don't even know what the correct word is anymore. There are so many different ways to describe Donald Trump. But you know what? One way that I want to describe Donald Trump? Former president. Can't wait. Okay. Moving on. I think that kind of says it all. Okay. There seems to be a little bit of a catfight going on here between two ardent supporters of President Trump. Now, this is Ann Coulter versus Newt Gingrich, which, of course, is a lot of fun because I love Republican on Republican crime. So now this whole thing started, of course, when Ann Coulter basically went after Newt Gingrich for Gingrich advising the president not to listen to Ann Coulter. Now, she, of course, tweeted out, good news for George Herbert Walker Bush. As of today, he is no longer the biggest wimp to ever serve as president of the United States. Now, that's Ann Coulter on Trump's cave over the border wall. So now, one of the reasons, by the way, that Trump shut down the government in the first place is because he was being bullied by both Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh, who were calling him, who were saying that, oh, you're weak and you got to go for the border wall. We need a border. We don't have a country if we don't have a border wall. So Donald Trump, you got to build a wall and you can shut down the government. That turned out to be the absolute worst thing to do and a complete disaster for both the Republican Party and your own polling. I mean, look, his polling is just terrible. So he dropped to about 34% in the polls when it comes to favorability, and he's taken heat from a lot of even conservatives, right? So, look, Trump supporters even were saying, yes, we do want the wall, but don't shut down the government for it. But Ann Coulter, by the way, she's different than your run-of-the-mill Trump supporter in eastern Pennsylvania, right? Ann Coulter's rich. Ann Coulter doesn't have to deal with food stamps getting shut down. Ann Coulter doesn't have to deal with, lack of, as I said, food stamps or losing your home or being on furlough and not being able to make your mortgage payments. Ann Coulter's rich. She don't care. She hates brown people, and all she cares about is, what was that quote that she had said before? She wanted to prevent the browning of America. What a loathsome person. And look, that's not even comparing her to Newt Gingrich, who was also a loathsome person, and I think probably one of the people whose actions during his time in Congress as Speaker of the House kind of got us to where we're at right now in our politics. I mean, he's one of the, I guess, principal people who started the whole reign of dysfunctional government and obstruction. So, yeah. So, again, these are both not good people. But anyway, Fox and Friends had Newt Gingrich on earlier this morning, and here's what he said. Quote, he should not pay any attention to Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter's never run for office. She doesn't know anything about how you put a majority together. She's off here on some fantasy land where she gets to be noisy, which helps her sell books. That is an open-handed slap, boy. Let me tell you. You should not pay attention to her because all she's doing is selling books. That's awesome. Now, here came the response. Coulter says, Newt Gingrich claims I'm in a fantasy land for criticizing the president for breaking his central campaign promise. It has now come to my attention that Trump has built the full border wall, and it's working beautifully. That is why Trump is sailing to re-election. A little bit of snark there, of course. She continues, Newt's right, I'm just selling books, but at least I don't have to kiss Trump's ass to do so. Now it's getting better. Riddle of the day, how do you break Newt Gingrich's nose? Answer, kick Donald Trump in the ass. Oh, it just keeps getting better. You can just I don't know, you can taste the salt. So much salt in these tweets. Poor Newt, at least Rudy got a job. Oh, there's more. Newt seems to believe that you have to run for office to comment on public affairs. The Constitution doesn't just give free speech to disgraced politicians. It also affords speech rights to another category called citizens. And another one, the great thing about Newt is you can always count on him to tell truth to power. Again, there's more. She went on a hate-filled Twitter storm, which was fantastic. Now, again, I don't like either of these people, and I love Republican and Republican crime. But what this shows is that there is a pretty big disconnect between people who are loyal to the president and people who are loyal to the president and his policies. So Ann Coulter, for all the terrible things that she is, she actually cares specifically about this policy and is like, hey, man, I wanted him to build a wall. I'm racist. I hate brown people, and I want him to build a border wall. Newt Gingrich is like, I don't care what he does. I like power. And so I like power. I'm a politician. I'm a political animal. So I'm also racist, but I also go and gravitate towards winning and losing and who's got the most power in this situation. And right now, people like Ann Coulter, oh, they're not helping our situation at all. So don't listen to her. Don't listen to her. Try to find another way to get to get our racist wall that we actually want. So it is interesting to see that disconnect and to see that open vitriol, that open anger towards President Trump from somebody who definitely agrees with with him on policy. So, and for us, it's just fun watching this happening because, look, we all know that there's no winner, except for if you're here with your popcorn watching this go down. Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We've got Bible literacy. What is that? What's going on there? And more. So stay right here. We'll come back. Around the Nation. We're back. Run the Nation, right here, Jeff Waldorf there. Okay, so we've got some new channel members that have signed up. I want to give a shout out to you guys. A lot of you are very, big regulars in the chat, so I appreciate that. I fart magic, which is always fun. Is it like fire magic, or is it ice magic, or is it arcane? I don't know. Or, I mean, maybe it's elemental. I don't know. Oh, nature magic. Nature magic. That's got to be it. Well, thank you for that, by the way. Also, we have a couple new members. Elwell and Starch Tech. So, thank you. You guys are great. You guys are awesome. So, thank you much for signing up to the members. Again, you're all very awesome. Okay, so we have some breaking news that I want to talk about, and that is what's going on in Venezuela. So here we go. Predictably, the United States has just put sanctions on the Maduro government. According to Reuters, the U.S. has imposed sanctions on Venezuelan state-owned oil firm PDVSA. According to White House National Security Advisor John Bolton. He said, quote, "We have continued to expose the corruption of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his cronies, and today's action ensures that they can no longer loot the assets of the Venezuelan people." So what they actually want to do is that they want to sanction, and then they want to apparently give the assets to the opposition. So there's something about seizing, no, I believe it's the opposition here, and I'm not as much as well read on this as I'd like to be. But I believe the opposition wants oil companies seized along with the United States, or oil assets seized and given to the opposition from the state government. So that's very incredibly problematic and a little ironic. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to basically open up the country's oil reserves to American corporations. In fact, as Bolton said on Thursday, he said, what was it? Quote, "It would make a difference if we could have American companies produce the oil in Venezuela. It would be good for Venezuela and for the people of the United States." No, you know who it would be good for? American corporations. You know what it would be good for? Koch Industries. That's what it would be good for. And so this entire thing, this entire coup that is being backed by the United States against somebody who I don't agree with, right? Against a government that is corrupt, well, it's still a coup. And I don't agree with interfering in other people's political, politics, basically. And that's what this is. We are literally backing a government that is going to be overthrown, right? Or that is going to try to overthrow another government. When have we should learn that does not work. So we're backing a supreme right-winger who's been putting out propaganda, of course, and then, that is backed by American corporate interests who want a stake in Venezuela's economy, specifically the oil companies, right? So what we want to do, our companies, our American companies or multinational corporations use the United States government to, overthrow a government that has nationalized oil assets so that they can open up and exploit those assets for monetary gain. Now, that said, the Maduro government has completely bungled and mismanaged and their assets and everything like that. Their government, it's a terrible government, but at the same time, the United States has also been attempting to sabotage said government as well. So you can't ignore the West's, the American government's role in this, in destabilizing the government of Venezuela, and you also can't ignore what Maduro and Chavez had set up that was also not going to work. So it's a very, very complicated situation that we have here in Venezuela, but it's not very complicated to figure out the reason that the United States is actually backing the challenge to Maduro's government. And that is simply money. That is simply resources that could go to American corporations, which means profit. So I'm very disheartened by seeing what's going on, because sanctions, look, they say, oh no, we're here to liberate the Venezuelan people, right? Who are suffering so much. You know who suffers under these sanctions? The Venezuelan people. The very people that you are trying to, or you say that you're trying to protect. That's why generally I'm not in favor of sanctions, because they end up hurting regular human beings and not rich people. So, but that's what we're doing here in the United States. We are basically hurting the Venezuelan people as a pretext to support a very right-wing leader who, if installed, would immediately open up the country's oil reserves to American corporations. That's the situation here, boiled down to, I think, its very most simplistic point, without all the other nuance involved. And again, that nuance is important, but this, I think, is the main point. Okay. This is why people like John Bolton are so dangerous, being in those positions. But anyway, okay. Let's move on to the stories, huh? Okay. Now, President Trump is now advocating for Bible literacy lessons in U.S. schools. Now, on Twitter, Trump had tweeted out, quote, numerous states introducing Bible literacy classes, giving students the option of studying the Bible. Starting to make a turn back? Great. Now, this was after, of course, he was live tweeting Fox and Friends over this. But basically what's been going on here is that there have been proposals in at least 6 states that would make public schools offer what they call optional classes on the Bible's literary and historical significance. Now, does the Bible have literary and historical significance? Well, sure. It has been something that a lot of governments and a lot of movements have been based on. So if you want to study the significance in historical context, okay, well, that's perfectly fine, right? Now, the problem is that, as I'm going to show you, that's not what's going on here. But first, Bible literacy bills were introduced in Florida, Indiana, Missouri, North Dakota, Virginia, and West Virginia in 2019, according to the ACLU, which said that Bible literacy bills were also considered in Alabama, Iowa, and West Virginia last year, but did not pass. So now it's very important that I point out why this is happening and what's going on here, and why this would be a terrible idea. Well, for one, critics say that such measures come close to violating or may violate the constitutional separation between church and state. Now, how would it do that? I mean, look, if it's presented in context and it's optional and it's all about, you know, history and its impact, then if they treated it like any other book, okay. Even I could be in favor of having an optional thing, but, and my caveat to it is, add in also other religious books, like the Mahabharata, the Quran. I know that I just made people's head explodes. And all that other, you know, all these other important cultural, you know, books, have them study the context and their effect on the respective cultures. I'd be absolutely fine with that. I think actually the most effective way of making people into atheists is to actually have them study the Bible. But anyway, the proposed bills, and as you're going to see, this is not that, are linked to an initiative called Project Blitz. Now, that project is coordinated by a variety of conservative Christian groups, including the Congressional Prayer Caucus Foundation and the National Legal Foundation, as reported by the USA Today. So, as I said before, you might think, well, wait a minute, it's optional, and what they're saying that this is just gonna, look at the historical significance. Well, the ACLU said it's investigated the courses and uncovered public school teachers using the Bible to impart religious life lessons and other practices which fall far short of the constitutionally permissive academic and objective study of the Bible and its historical context or literary value. So basically, this is one thing, calling it, oh no, this is just a study class where you get to look at it in its context, but it's not actually religious. But they've turned it into basically a Bible study class as if you were sitting in church. Well, that's not at all what you're supposed to do in a school, in an educational environment. You want to do that at church? Well, that's what church is for. That's not what school is for. School is for teaching facts, right? If you want your kids to learn your religion, then you send them to church. Now, apparently, a lot of religious leaders are probably freaking out. Evangelicals are freaking out because the United States is continuing to become less and less of a religious country. So their solution to that, and again, you can look at various different polls that show that people that are identifying, or not identifying with religion are a growing segment of the population. They look at that and go, oh my God, we got to do something about that, literally. I know, let's try to find some way to shoehorn religion into schools so we can drive those people, those young people, into the churches. And so, guess what? That's what they're doing. Under the leadership of Betsy DeVos, who hates public education, who love to see religious indoctrination put in their schools, is okay with this, is fine with this, and is pushing this, and also pushing to defund public schools and do charter schools. This is a multi-front attack on both secularism and on the education system as a whole. You can see what they're doing here. It's very obvious. So, yes, this is a violation of church and state if that's what they're doing. And look, there's one thing that they could do. Remove the courses. I think that's obvious. Or if you really are set on having a biblical study course that actually does look at the historical context, because I think that course would actually be fairly informative and actually pretty interesting. As I actually like learning about other religions, and I actually like studying them in their context. Now, one way to do that, though, and I don't think you're going to like it, but one way to actually have these classes still is that you start offering the same courses with other religions. For example, course on Islam. Are they going to do that? Of course they're not. No, their heads would explode. I mean, look, I have a general rule when it comes to religion in the classroom, right? For one, don't do it. That's the first rule. If there's a second rule is, if you're going to do it, well, then you have to do it for other religions. And it basically comes down to this principle. If you look at a piece of legislation on Christianity or the Bible, right? If you can apply the same thing to, like, say, the Quran and have it be okay, well, then you're good. But if you can't, if you can't apply it to Muslims or Jewish people or Hindus or whatever, then it's probably a bad bill. Then it's probably a bad piece of legislation meant for one purpose, and that is to indoctrinate people into your religion. And so if you're in favor of this, even knowing that context, then we know what you're in favor of. For one, we know that you don't care about Bible literacy at all. And for two, you only want to use public resources in order to spread your religion. And that, right there, is anti-American. Okay. So let's go to Trump's tax cuts. All right. I think that's broken. I think all of those are broken. Whoops. I don't know what's going on there, but okay. So there's more bad news for President Trump's signature accomplishment, that is the giant tax cuts on corporations and the wealthy. Now, according to a new survey, the Trump's $1.5 trillion tax cut package has apparently had no impact on both investment or hiring. Now, this is done by the National Association of Business Economics Quarterly Business Conditions poll that was published on Monday, found that while some companies did report some accelerating investment because of lower corporate taxes, a vast majority of them said no, they have not increased hiring or investment. So, you know how much of how many companies said they had no plans to change because of the corporate tax cuts? 84%. 84% of companies surveyed said, yeah, we're not going to do anything. No, we're not going to increase investment. You know what we're going to do with our tax cuts? We're actually going to go and use it for stock buybacks and executive compensation. Of course, because we don't actually need to invest anymore because we don't have that demand. Now, what's funny is that, of course, the administration, when they were trying to sell this to the American people, which, by the way, they did so very poorly because polling at this actually has an incredibly unpopular policy among most American respondents. Now, they said, though, oh, no, if we cut taxes for corporations and the rich, and this is the whole lie about trickle down, not just this specific tax policy that was enacted by Trump, but also the entire purpose of trickle down, right? Oh, if we cut corporations and their taxes and cut taxes for the rich, then they're going to massively invest and then create lots and lots of jobs. Well, once again, we have an example of that not working. In fact, as I said before, NABE President Kevin Swift said a large majority of respondents, 84%, indicate that 1 year after its passage, the corporate tax reform has not caused their firms to change hiring or investment plans. He said the lower tax rates, however, did have an impact in the goods-producing sector, with 50% of respondents from that sector reporting increased investments at their companies, and 20% saying they redirected hiring and investments to the United States from abroad. So, now that might sound like a lot. Oh my God, 50% of goods producing, like manufacturing, for example, actually have done some more investment. Okay. Now, unfortunately, that seems to be barely a change overall, because these tax cuts have cost at least $1.5 trillion in revenue. So that's no longer being collected by the government. That means that we can't do things like fixing Flint's water. That means we can't do things like repairing our broken infrastructure or investing in the next group, of Americans. For example, doing something about college debt or doing something about healthcare. Can't do that because, oh, look at that. We lost $1.5 trillion. At least that's what most mainstream economists would actually say. But it gets worse, right? Now, the survey suggested a slowdown in business spending. In fact, the survey's measure of capital spending fell in January to its lowest level since July of 2017. Now, that's just investment, right? What about jobs? According to the survey, employment growth improved modestly in the fourth quarter of 2018 compared to the third quarter. Just over 1/3 of respondents reported rising employment at their firms over the past 3 months. Now, basically what this is very modest increases in employment. Basically following the trend that we've been following since 2016 and before. Jobs rise at a modest pace, but we're not having a massive surge of employment. It's not like we're sitting on massive unemployment either, but basically we've been following the trend, and so these tax cuts have had very little effect on hiring trends. So what we've seen more often than not is not an investment in their company, an investment in jobs, or an investment in their wages, raising those wages, No, we've seen wages that are continuing to basically be flat. No hugely significant increase in wages, except for if you have governments and cities that are saying, no, we're going to go to a $15 minimum wage, we're going to go to a living wage. Well, okay, we've seen that, but that's not spurred by the tax cuts. That's actually spurred by protests and people that were fighting for fairer wages. It has nothing to do with Trump's tax cuts. And so the reason that these didn't have an impact is because, look, there are two truths, right? Higher taxes on the rich don't stop investment or hiring, right? And lower taxes on the rich don't encourage investment and hiring as well. No business owner will look at their tax bill and make a decision based on, to hire people based on that. They look at it as, do we need more people to help us get our product? Now, of course, there are businesses that sometimes want to increase their profit margin, and they will look at employees to see, okay, who do I get rid of so I can make more profit? It's not based necessarily on your tax rates. Now, I'm not saying tax rates don't matter, of course, especially when it comes to a small business, right? But it's not the sole reason they invest, hire, or fire. If it were true, then every time we cut taxes, we would see a massive job and investment boom. But it doesn't happen. It didn't happen under Bush, won't happen under Trump. And it's because the whole premise is flawed. Trickle-down economics does not work. You have to have policies that actually do work for regular people. For example, marginal tax rates of over 70%. In fact, look, we've had marginal tax rates in the rich of up to 90%. And guess what? It was during large economic booms. Some of the largest, best times for a middle class, where we had the largest middle class, which unfortunately did not include people who are black or Hispanic, but mostly white. And I understand that there was huge problems with racial inequality, same kind of inequality that we have today, especially on the economic front. But back then, you still had a very large, robust middle class, which we don't have today. And you still had tax rates, I believe it was over $2 million, you had a 90% rate. Why can't we get back to that? Well, we could get back to that, and could get back to those better economic times, although we could include everybody this time, if we actually adopt these policies that had actually worked. And that includes higher taxes on the rich and corporations. So we know it works. We know it doesn't work. And once again, we have an example of what doesn't work and why. Trickle-down economics. And we know that it's not an effective means of creating economic growth and good jobs and good wages, but it does have the effect of inflating the stock market by doing stock buybacks. Executive compensation continues to increase. Wages are still flat. The income inequality gap continues to grow, while the cost of being alive, buying homes, student loans, all that stuff continues to increase. So, knowing what we know now, we need to elect politicians that are willing to defy the political donors, right, who are funded by these wealthy corporations and billionaires, so that they can get together and they can pass legislation that will fairly tax the rich, so we can actually make America great. Okay. Speaking of politicians, let's go to our last story real quick. I don't know why that doesn't work today. My buttons are all broken. All right. With the 2020 Democratic primary now have begun, sorry, let me try that again. That did not sound good. With the start of the Democratic primary, Wall Street is trying to figure out which Democrat would have their backing. Now, there's a lot of choices this time. There's a lot of people that are running or that are about to jump into the race. But according to an article of Politico, there are two choices that high-paid executives at Wall Street firms are starting to freak out about. Now, who are these choices? Well, I will let you guys know. But first, I'll tell you who they actually want. Apparently, they actually are preferring someone like Michael Bloomberg. Now, Michael Bloomberg is a billionaire, and he's looking to possibly jump into the race as a self-funded candidate, right? Now, according to Politico, Wall Street executives who want Trump out of the White House mentioned, quote, a consisting roster of appealing nominees that they would find acceptable outside of Bloomberg, who the outlet describes as Wall Street's, quote, platonic deal. Oh, I love Michael Bloomberg. Oh, let's get us some of that Bloomberg action. You know why? It's because Michael Bloomberg will have their back. Now, but who else? Well, the roster that Wall Street approves of includes Senator Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, Kamala Harris, Vice President Joe Biden, and former Representative Beto O'Rourke. So that's who Wall Street wants. Who is Wall Street afraid of? It appears that they are afraid of both Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Warren has already announced. Bernie Sanders, there is a lot of buzz about him possibly announcing, but we don't know when. In fact, according to a CEO of a giant bank telling Politico anonymously, quote, it can't be Warren and it can't be Sanders. Is there no more of a better endorsement for Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren than having a high-paid CEO saying, oh, no, it can't be Warren, it can't be Sanders, can't be either of those guys. No, they're going to come after us. They're going to come after our money. They're actually going to be tough on us for once. Whoa. No, let's have somebody like Michael Bloomberg or Cory Booker. Hey, you know, if you're on that list of Wall Street approved Democrats, bye. I'm not interested in you. Progressives are not interested in you. And I think most of the country, when they find that out, is not going to be interested in you. Yes, we all know Trump is terrible, but these guys will suck up to Wall Street and they will do whatever the moneyed interests tell them to do. So again, I'm not interested in you. But it appears these candidates are very interested in what Wall Street has to think. A CNBC reporter earlier this month reported that Harris, Booker, and Gillibrand all had reached out to Wall Street to gauge their support for 2020 campaigns. And apparently, all of them, so far, have found some support from Wall Street. You know what got Hillary Clinton in trouble a lot during her campaign? Her close ties to Wall Street, her speeches to Goldman Sachs. That got her in a lot of trouble with a lot of progressives, and also having a private and public face when it comes to talking with corporations and business leaders. So, just like her, I'm not interested, right? I mean, look, a politician is supposed to reach out to the people, right? And these people, Booker, Gillibrand, Harris, Joe Biden and Beto O'Rourke, you've already failed. You have failed in that. And look, if you're okay with this and think, oh no, you don't understand, Jeff, Wall Street's awesome. We love deregulation. We love setting the stage for another global financial collapse. Well, then go ahead and vote for candidates in the primary who will represent them. Now, I have one more quote here from a hedge fund manager, and you'll love this. Quote, if it's Biden and Beto or Biden and Harris, that might make a difference. The good news for Biden is everyone likes him. The bad news is there is not a lot of passion. Well, there's not a lot of passion for a lot of these corporate Democrats. Look, I think surprisingly, there's a lot of passion for Harris, but you see CNN, of course, propping them up, and MSNBC as well. So I don't know how long she's going to stay in the primary. I don't know how, if they're going to continue to try to support her, but I can see her as pretty much the only one that I think can attempt to galvanize at least a lot of the centrists within the Democratic Party. But of course, the more you find out about her, the more you start not liking her. But as far as Biden goes, well, Biden just got caught helping a Republican win his election in a race where there was a Democrat. He's also insulted millennials. So, and look, I don't think that, I think that Biden is going to be one of the few to drop out fairly early, as he normally does, even though he does pull very well against Donald Trump. But if it's Biden and Beto, I wouldn't say count on Trump, But I would say kind of the conditions that created Trump to continue, as they have no desire to fix the real problems in this country, and that is corporate greed, money in politics, and, you know, because again, Beto O'Rourke says, oh, I didn't take corporate PAC money, but you did break your no fossil fuel money pledge. So we don't trust you, Biden and Beto. We don't trust you, either of you, or any of you corporate Democrats. But you know who I think will fix this, a lot of the problems, or will try? Bernie Sanders. And look, Elizabeth Warren also has a pretty good platform as well. I mean, I keep giving her a lot of credit, and she deserves it, for that very bold progressive idea in the wealth tax. Add in the fact that Wall Street hates both of them, I love it. Like, again, anybody who Wall Street hates, instantly, I absolutely love. In fact, the Daily Beast's Gideon Resnick writing on this, saying, quote, by coming out so strongly, and this illustrates the point, against the progressive senators, Wall Street is literally giving them a campaign slogan. It's almost like, no, I welcome your hatred. Well, that's what that is. So I love it. In fact, journalist Josh Mound also expands on that point and says, the best indication of who you should vote for in the Democratic primary, if you actually want progressive policy, is who Wall Street doesn't like, which essentially means Bernie or Warren. So, look, Wall Street is scared because for the first time in a while, they have actually faced the possibility that someone could get into power who might actually want to rein them in, regulate them, and tax them fairly. Gasp, shock, the horror. They can't stand it, so they're going to throw all their money in support as soon as a clear establishment candidate comes through, whether it be Cory Booker or Kamala Harris or, Beto O'Rourke or whoever it is. They're going to throw as much money and resources as they can behind that candidate to make sure that a progressive does not win. Who that will be, I don't know. But we got to get ready to fight against that. Okay. All right. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me. Thank you for staying with me, even though TYT has just come on. So I appreciate that. You guys are awesome. Thank you. Thank you for signing up to be a member. You can go through and do that on our page at any time. So we've got the link in the description, of course. Thanks to the new members today. You guys are great. So, all right. Fundraiser, of course, we got all that. Patreon, we're still running that, of course, too. So all that stuff is different ways to help the show. So I also want to give a shout out to somebody that contributed to our PayPal as well. So thank you so much on that, too. All right, guys. I got to go. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. TYT is next. See you tomorrow.